Find the site.
I had first part of a crown done this afternoon, so actually I just about got my my mouth not all frozen up as it was before. Bad news. The bad thing is though, when the numbness wears off, it means that the toothache kicks in. Alright, let's send the link out. Right, so link out. Oh, there's Jason.
There I am.
We can hit the ice cream van.
See, my Surface is now ringing.
I didn't realise what the time was.
You lost track of time. It's because we've been recording at 8:30, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
you completely.
I wonder if my Surface is ever going to stop ringing. Oh, it's gone now. Well, the notifications worked on just one device. That was quite good. It just wasn't the one I was using.
Halfway there.
Yeah, apart from that, it was working fine. Right, well, links are out, so let's just open the chat room. Right. Yep, I think we're all set. So, Jason and Gary, good evening.
Good evening and welcome back.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, and what a great job you did last week. I really enjoyed listening to that.
It was a good show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Lots to talk about, but yeah, it was really good.
I was sat in my hotel room in Italy at sort of 1 o'clock in the morning doing some sequel programming, and listening to the show. I thought it was quite good. And of course, I get a sneak preview because I got it before anybody else had got it. So I thought it was quite good. That.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you were sitting in your hotel room mixing different things together and digging holes and.
Yeah, because mining for diamonds.
Yeah, I wasn't. If my kids had the way, that's all they'd ever do.
Enchanting swords.
Yeah. In fact, this Minecraft is become a bit of a pain now because my kids have Minecraft on the Xbox 360, which they've been quite happy with, but then they play it all the time. But now they started watching Minecraft videos on YouTube, which they watch all the time. But you can't get the mods for the Xbox version. So
no, although I managed to my kids told me that you could download maps and convert them to work on the Xbox, which I told them don't be silly, you have to buy stuff through the Xbox store. But no, I was proved that I'm now definitely an old man. They said no, you definitely can. They showed me how to do it. So.
Well, yeah, but you can't get the mods, can you? That's the problem.
No.
So they now want a PC to run it on. Now you think that wouldn't be an issue really here, but it is actually because they've got Surface RTs.
Yes.
And I'm not going to give them obviously my Surface is no good. So I think it runs on Java, doesn't it? So maybe my old MacBook could be donated to the Minecraft cause, but we don't have we don't have a spare sort of laptops or anything like that because we've kind of all got Surfaces and whatever. So.
Yeah, I know our kids wanted to get on the PC, but we took the grumpy parent line of look, you play it on the Xbox, you play it on your iPod.
You could always spin up a VM on Azure and do it from the RT that way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I do believe that the head of Xbox, is it Phil Spencer, has committed to bringing it to Windows and Windows Phone. So time will tell.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Minecraft running in Azure.
Yeah, well, it's on Amazon Web Services at the moment, isn't it?
So,
Yes. So it's the mods though, so they've been showing on these mods and things. So you can see why Microsoft is so interested. I mean, they're spending hours watching YouTube videos of someone else playing it, which Yeah, that's how you know you're when that is not appealing.
Yes, yeah. Once you've watched the Tenant Stampy Cat video, that's it.
Yeah, and they're just watching like this, Doctor Who mod and then a Star Wars mod, and so it looks like we'd have to set something up for them, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, because they tell me that this version of the Surface will be the Pocket Edition. So I don't know how they know that. Yeah.
I've got some insider information.
Yeah. So there's my tip of the week. It's going to be the Xbox version, which it probably will be actually. But anyway, because they say you won't be able to put mods on the Surface version. Oh, that's all right. You already know that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, very good show. I enjoyed listening to that last week. Actually, and a funny thing, when I was away last week, I was at a meeting and there was about 20 of us, and we went to a restaurant on the Tuesday night when you recorded actually, and we were trying to take pictures, or they were taking pictures, and it was that sort of dusk getting into, getting dark, and there was a mixture of iPhones, Blackberries, and Samsungs, and only my phone would take pictures. So we ended up sort of taking all the group pictures with my phone, the 1520, because the low light performance on it is amazing compared to, say the Samsung ones, or even there was an iPhone 5 there.
Mm-hmm.
Really impressed with the camera. So we ended up sort of doing all the group shots with the 1520 because it's just so much better than any of the other devices that were there.
Well, that's it. One phone to win them all.
Yeah. So I was very impressed with, and so was everybody else. So impressed with the Lumia. Yeah. Good nighttime camera performance on the camera is fantastic. So.
And of course, it's going to get even better with the new update when you get it.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
When you're denimed up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So very pleased with the performance, and you can't fault the battery life. You out all day, from the airport and using the maps and whatever, and then you still got sort of 70-80% battery life at the end of the night. It's a big change from many of the Android phones I've used. The battery life. Don't have to worry about it on a Lumia.
Good stuff.
Yes, definitely a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah. Right. So what things we've got to talk about tonight? I could a little bit talk about the iPhones. We started to see some reviews of those. There is another update for Windows Phone coming in that I saw some tweets about. There was some app updates, and we're getting close to the Windows 9 preview.
Yep.
So quite a lot of things to talk about. So I thought we talked about the iPhones a couple of weeks ago. It's interesting to see the people on Twitter with getting the 6 Plus saying how great it is to have a phone with a large screen.
Yeah, there is the counter as well. I've seen a couple of people on Twitter sort of saying they're going to return it because they can't get on with the large screen. So it depends for Ian or Jason, really. I guess it's.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've seen also a number of views from kind of what I term as kind of quite diehard Apple people, and they seem pretty particularly unhappy with the extra size screen. But I think it is a case of, you can't necessarily please everybody, but I think maybe that's the advantage of it, isn't it, in the Android camp and also the Windows Phone camp. There's such a multitude of devices that you always get the device that fits your needs. If you want a smaller phone, you can get a smaller phone, but Apple tend to normally restrict themselves to one device. Then with the iPhone 5C, obviously had two devices, and the same again. But there isn't that you're kind of limited by choice.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing you get with other ecosystems, and I suppose now with the iPhone you've got a bit of choice. But it's just kind of funny seeing people singing the praises of large screen phones, and probably the same people who were ridiculing the Galaxy Note when it first came out.
Yeah, but it certainly does seem to be that that's the way things are going. That consumers like a phone, roughly between 5 inches, or maybe bigger for people like yourself, Ian. But I think those people that are used to the small size of the iPhone quite like it. And but I think at the end of the day, Apple's got to play to the numbers, haven't they?
Yeah. So Gary, on the developer side, is there sort of more things you've got to do in that now?
Well, there's the whole iOS 8 stuff came in, but the new screen size is a pain. Get more fragmentation in the market, get more stuff, more images you have to get created in the right sizes and things. Although it does scale, but I mean, as someone tweeted out the other day, they wanted the developers to fix the fuzzy screen on their iPhone 6 Plus, and that is true. I mean, until people do go in there and get the app scaled, it's going to be a pain. So yeah, that, I mean, it's good to have that bit more real estate to play with. I'm actually surprised they did it as a completely different resolution. I was half expecting them to use the the original iPad resolution for it. But I guess they wanted the 1020p side of things, so I understand that. But
sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, so that's the main change really from the developer. The iOS 8 stuff opens up an awful lot of things. You can replace the keyboard and all sorts of things. So there's a lot more flexibility in the operating system. There is more of an opening up there, while some areas, some of the competition is starting to close down gaps. So it's quite interesting in its own right.
Yeah, it was funny trying to get iOS 8 on my iPad. So I've got a 16 gig iPad Mini Retina, and it wanted 7 gig of free space.
I know, it's virtually impossible to install it on most of my devices. I had to delete the music off before I could install it.
Yeah, go on, Jace.
No, I was going to say exactly the same thing. It just won't install on our iPad Mini. I think I'm probably going to have to take the Office apps off temporarily and then maybe put them on again afterwards.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had to do. I had to take all the apps off virtually. I mean, it seems to me that 16 gig these days is really skinny, but they've dropped the 32 gig SKU, haven't they, on most of the devices, on the phones anyway.
Yeah.
I would have thought drop the 16, but maybe that's just the way of eking it out a little bit more per price per device without making the device appear more expensive. I think 16 was too small. And in the past I would have got 32. Now I'd have to look at the 64, and maybe that's a way of squeezing a bit more out of you.
It does seem a bit ridiculous though to have an update that requires 50% of your storage to be free. It just seems ludicrous. Surely they must have a better way of doing it, either in a 2-step update or expecting people to essentially. I think I read quite a few people were basically kind of wiping their devices, upgrading to iOS 8, and then restoring them.
Yeah.
It just seems a bit ridiculous.
I think if you did it through the iTunes as well, that's kind of what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It does a wipe, then install, then does a reinstall.
Yeah.
Restore, backup. Yeah, which you could do. But it's still a pain.
Yeah, it just seems to me nowadays 16 gig is a bit on the small side for a device. If your OS upgrade is going to take roughly half of that, but then not having a 32 gig option or an SD card, it's still the best solution for me. It seems to the way that it works on the Windows phone, where you can put the card in and you can just choose what you want to do with it. Or on Android, it's similar sort of ways as well. That having that flexibility with the SD card storage does make a big difference.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've just bought an 128 gigabyte micro SD card for my Lumia, which worked perfectly. So I put my old 64 gig card into my son's Lumia 630, and like you say, it's just really simple, just to either move apps across, or initially the phone, after it started up, said detected SD card. Do you want to use this for apps and music? And you say yes, and you can also manually move applications across as well. So it seems to work really well and really simply.
Yeah, we discussed this last week about the idea of Storage Sense coming to Windows 9 potentially. Yeah. That'll be brilliant if that does. I'm just messing around trying to get this. I think I mentioned this, the Switch 10 I've been playing with, which is a lovely device, but only 32 gigs internal memory. And you do need an external drive, but trying to get all the programs across and onto the drive is just a nightmare, especially Windows 8 store apps. And it's not so much of a problem if you haven't got a lot of storage, but because one of the things I use a lot is mail, and I keep all the mail history I've had for the last 20 years almost, because I have to do for some legal stuff I do. That takes an awful lot of space up, and that can take up the whole of my C drive with just that one app.
Yeah. Also, just going back to the size of the iPhone, I do like how they've kind of taken the portrait view, so the landscape view, and actually put it to good use. I like the fact that when you in portrait, in landscape mode, I like the way the email application splits into a 2-pane view, and it does seem a shame that sort of feature isn't on the 1520.
Yeah, that's developer implementation again, so it's going to be a pain to do. And I noticed that because I use the two-pane view quite a lot on the iPad when I'm developing stuff through Xamarin, and I noticed that when I tried that on the iOS 8 iPhone, it didn't work. So obviously some tweaks to do.
Yeah, I was surprised that sort of that you just kind of assume that the way that it works on the iPad would be the same on the iPhone, but like you said, they're not exactly the same resolution.
No, it would have made a lot of sense, but designers never seem to see that way.
Yeah, so I don't think there was anything else on the iPhone. I just wanted to mention, but those were my initial thoughts. It was good to see people agreeing with me on the size of a good phone.
Yeah, just while we're on iOS 8, I noticed that this is this Pebble user talking again here. The Pebble actually got a little update out very quickly for iOS 8, and one of the things that it allows you to do now is actually dismiss notifications on your phone, which is something which was completely locked down before on iOS 7.
Right.
So it's nice to see that there are some of the people are already able to take advantage of some of the things they're actually freeing up in that OS.
Who would have ever thought Apple freeing up, opening up its operating system?
Indeed.
Yeah.
By the way, sorry, talking about features and whatnot, digressing slightly, but I don't know if you saw, I tweeted out the weekend, I was at my son's karate grading, and there was a lady with a kid in a pushchair and a little girl trotting along behind, and she kind of moved in front of me, and I saw her checking her phone, and the geek that I am always look over and see what phone people have got, and I noticed it was a Windows phone from the tiles, and then I saw her lock the phone, swipe across the kid's corner and unlock it and hand it to a little girl, and I thought, we kind of talk about these features, and we say, well, they're really nice to have, but it's kind of interesting to see that actually people, kind of normal people in the real world actually do make use of this stuff.
Yeah, that is that's a really nice feature. My kids are a bit old for that now, but I think a few years ago I would definitely have used that, because they always used to nag how they play a game, and now you can kind of trust them not to mess, but a few years ago it would be great to lock it down.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I use it on my phone for my kids, and my wife uses it on hers. But it's just interesting to see someone that probably isn't, just bought a phone and made use of a feature that's available without necessarily, being sitting reading loads of news stories about how to get it working.
Yeah. You do see more and more of Windows phones. Well, I don't know whether this is since I've picked up the Lumia, but I do see more and more people with them now as well. Real people.
Yes, although. Disheartening, I was in a car phone warehouse the other day, and there was a guy at the front of the queue with a faulty Nokia.
Don't mention that to Richard in the chat room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't hear what the problem was. I mean, whether or not he was unhappy with it, or whether or not I dropped it, or quite what. But I thought, it's not very good, is it?
No. Now, another device that I did get to play with a bit of time when I was killing some time at the airport was the Surface Pro 3. First time I've actually really played with it. I've seen one briefly, but I just spent some time with it. And I was talking to the guy at the airport, and I had my Surface 2 with me, and I put them side by side. And I know you'd already said this, Gary, but it's the first time I'd really seen them side by side. The extra screen size doesn't really make that much difference to the actual physical size of it.
It doesn't, no. It's really surprising. And as I said before, I think the Pro 3 is actually lighter than the Pro 2. And I must admit, I really like it. It is a shame they've had so many problems with the Wi-Fi and the overheating on the Pro 3, and they still haven't necessarily sorted all that out. But other than that, it's a really nice bit of kit.
Yeah, I really like the look of it, but it's just, it's still perhaps, it's just probably a little bit overkill for what I need for now. But if I was looking to replace my main development laptop at work, then I think that's what I would look at.
Yeah, if I didn't need to have Xcode for developing iOS stuff, I'd probably get one to replace the MacBook Air eventually.
And the keyboard I thought was pretty nice as well. The way that again, the keyboard doesn't look that much bigger than the keyboard I'm using, but it is bigger, and it's got the extra little sort of clip on it.
Yeah, the magnetic clip to clip it on the front of the unit, which actually works really well to hold it very stable.
So yeah, I was quite impressed with that. It's just, and I had a look on this Microsoft Store, and it looks like the smaller, the cheapest one is sold out anyway. You can't even get that.
Yeah, they do seem to be struggling with supply. But the other thing which I've been looking, and I haven't seen the dock available in many places in the UK. I know you can order it from the Microsoft Store site, but I kind of expected that John Lewis would have that in stock as well.
Apparently coming soon, from what I understand talking to them.
Right, I got you.
But I mean, it's good you can actually order it from the store because you never really had that option with the Surface Pro 2.
No, that was disappointing. It never came to the UK because that was something I was really interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember they used to have the register your interest thing, and then they got rid of that as well. So yeah, I was really impressed. So if I had the need for a decent laptop, I think that's what I would look at now. It's definitely a really nice screen, nice form factor, and it just makes you wonder now though what the future for the Surface range is. Does the Surface range become the Pro device in the sort of high end?
I think it might do. I mean, if you start looking at what's happening in the low end, we've obviously talked about the Encore Mini 7. And actually, if anybody's interested in seeing a really good review of that, check up YouTube. And Dave McCabe from Surface Geeks and Home Service has done a really good video review of the Mini 7. But we've seen those devices coming in at that low end, really low end side of things. And then at the sort of the around about the £220, £230 mark, we're starting to get a lot of the convertibles coming in. So things have got like the Switch 10, which I mentioned earlier, which is a really nice device, 10-inch tablet with a keyboard you clip on the bottom, very much like the Surface Approach. And it's very difficult for Microsoft to compete on price on those. And what they're trying to do, obviously trying to do, was do sort of the best in breed. So it really leaves the Pro series, I think. And I know we've sort of discussed whether RT will stay around. And it's actually difficult to see a niche for it, although I know they are keen to pursue it, keep it going. So, I mean, I think what I was saying last week, Jason, about with the whole Windows 9 side of things, you can see the way they're going with the tablet version of Windows 9. It actually becomes the benefits of the RT version, but without needing to be RT.
Right. Yes, that's what you mean. Yeah.
And now with Intel, with the Core M, with low prices, it's actually cheaper to make an Intel-based tablet than it is to make an ARM-based tablet at the moment, which is crazy. That sort of 10 years ago, 10 months ago, you would never have thought that was likely to happen. So I think there's a lot of things going on at the moment which point away from the ARM-based. I would like to see them continue the ARM-based side of things. I think it's really useful to have there, particularly for embedded versions. And there's always going to be swings around and roundabouts in these things. You can see Qualcomm coming up with new chips, and it's always going to be sort of next year. It'll probably be ARM cheaper than Intel again.
Yeah, I suppose. But the thing that I would miss if this, for some examples, maybe I'm a sort of a strange or unique case, but the Surface 2 itself that I'm using now, because it's my evenings weekend machine. And I use it all. I mean, I'm using it now to read the notes on. If I was going to go and write a blog post, I'd use it. And when I went to meetings last week, I mean, again, a great example. In the meetings last week, you got 20 people scrabbling around for 6 power sockets for their various laptops, the Dells and Samsung laptops. And I just didn't have to worry about it because I knew I had a full day's charge. I put all my notes in OneNote. And it was all be synced up and everything, and it worked brilliantly. I like the idea of having that sort of long battery life, slim, lightweight device. But I suppose what you're saying is that there are other people that could step in, like the ones that you've been trying.
Yeah. I think there's a whole, certainly the low end, since they've done this licensing deal where you don't pay for the license. I think there's going to be a lot more coming in that area, and certainly sort of that coming out of EFA.
Jason, what about the Lumia 2520? Do you think that's going to go away, or is that the device that we'll be looking at?
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I would like to see a successor to it. I mean, I would still really love using the Lumia, and I'm definitely kind of glad I switched away from the Surface. So yeah, I would like to see a successor, but like Gary says, I think the problem is, Microsoft has a habit of treating OEMs quite roughly when they don't necessarily work the way they want them to, and I think they use it as a bit of a stick to get Intel to get their Atom processors more energy efficient and more performant. So, I do think there is a risk that maybe we might see that disappear. But same as Gary, really, I'd like to see that line continue.
I mean, what's sort of the Intel ones, Gary? What kind of battery life are we going to see then on a sort of maybe a 10-inch hybrid or
Oh,
device.
I mean, you potentially with the Core M and the new Atoms when they come out, you'd be getting the similar sort of levels you're getting with the ARM chip. So you'd be talking 16 to 18 hours potentially with a reasonable battery in a 10-inch.
Yeah.
I think the Switch 10's got about 6 to 7 hours at the moment, but that's obviously with the last year's Atom processor. But they were talking. I mean, with Core M's, they were talking 35 to 60% increase in battery life on those as well. So they were talking about full-size laptops lasting 10 hours, 12 hours, going through the day. But basically, their aim with Intel's aim was that you had a laptop which would get you through the day without being charged. So I mean, they're talking sort of like the Ultrabook type spec devices lasting that long. So when you get down to the lower end, as long as you've got a decent battery, and battery technology is improving all the time as well, of course. So I think we are going to see competitive battery lives.
Maybe what we'd like to see then is a Surface 3 that's the same form factor that we've given the Surface 2 now, but with effectively a Pro, an Intel Pro one, but with the sort of a future SKU that's going to be more around the tablet SKU.
Yeah. I think Windows 9 tablet, well, whatever it's called, Windows 1, Windows, whatever it's going to be, called, will be there. I mean, the other thing is obviously we have got this move up scaling support of Windows Phone. I mean, Windows Phone can now support up to 8-inch screens, so you start to see where will the tablet lie in that field, especially with one code base. Yeah. With the one core stuff. So there's a whole lot of questions which we won't really get answers for a few months yet.
Yeah, now we will see some questions answered, won't we, next week?
Yes, because we've got this enterprise briefing. I think it's quite funny. I don't know if you listened to Digital Media and Entertainment 2.0 last week, where they were talking about. Josh was saying it's for enterprises, and Richard was saying, well, it's funny how desktop is just for enterprises these days. It's for consumers anyway. And I think a lot of the stuff they'll announce next week will definitely affect consumers as well, because it will be about desktops and how it all hangs together and what they're putting in the new build to make the desktop easier to use.
I'm still, because I listen to that show as well, and I'm not necessarily convinced that consumers do want the desktop. I think definitely at work, and I think in some ways, I think it's easy to think, yes, people like us, developers, and me working in SQL Server, that I want the desktop. But then I kind of see myself as being an enterprise user, albeit I'm not a massive company. But and I just think for the general public, I don't think they do want the desktop. If they wanted the desktop, then iPads and Android tablets wouldn't be selling.
But then again, what we said last week on the IFA figures, that relatively iPads, Android tablets aren't selling as well as PCs are now.
Yeah, I guess. But what I mean is, I think that pure tablet experience does appeal to consumers who don't need that complexity of installing text editors and SQL Management Studio and Visual Studio. They want to check their email, they want to browse the web, and I think so. From that perspective, I don't think the desktop is a consumer feature.
I think it depends if you're a consumer or a creator.
Yes.
I mean, it's like I was talking to my dad the other day, and he's very much a creator with his PC, and although he's got a tablet, he doesn't use it very much because the PC is where he sits and he does his notes for his meetings and his clubs and all that stuff he belongs to. And if you're sort of like generating minutes and things like that, yes, you could do them in Word and that on the tablet, but the keyboard and the mouse is a better environment for that. I'm not so much saying that the tablet's a bad environment in terms of the software which is on it, because you can get Office and Word and everything on there, but it is that keyboard and mouse, keypad and touchpad, which is where the Surface comes in, obviously, and the crossover tablets come in. But you're right. I mean, that doesn't necessarily need to be a desktop, but it's a desktop machine. If you see it like.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with Gemini Office on a Windows 9 tablet, that you could, I'm sure Microsoft do see these devices as being PCs as well as they're kind of next generation PCs. So we'll be able to plug in a keyboard and a mouse, or we'll have docking stations or whatever it might be. But I think we're still kind of a bit in that kind of no man's land. Once the applications kind of catch up with the implementation of the Windows environment, I think the desktop will can fade away from that consumer's perspective, and it will just leave developers, and as I say that the real graphics designers and stuff. Then yes, but do they necessarily fit into the pure consumer?
No, it depends on you. There's consumers and there's consumers.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Thank you. That's the point I'm trying to make. I guess.
and there was a term coined for that a few years ago, which is the prosumer market. And there's prosumers in all sorts of different fields. You've got photography prosumers, you've got art prosumers, because they're slightly more going to use a PC more than the average person is going to use it.
And the other area, though, I think and I think this is probably specifically what's trying to be addressed next week at Microsoft's briefing, is the people that are used to Windows 7. So it's not that they're prosumers or amateurs or whatever. It's just they're used to Windows 7 and can't handle Windows 8.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that about, and as much as I'd like to deny it, because I find you and me and Jason, we all find the Metro interface, or modern interface, really easy to use. When you start looking at the reviews on places like Argos and stuff, just real world reviews, the number of people saying I can't get on with Windows 8, and it is because it's different. And someone actually made a really good. I've been looking at some reviews of laptops today because someone I know wants to buy one. I was just checking up on it, and one of the reviews was, he said, I can't get on Windows 8. I probably could if there was an instruction book. And that's, I think, one of the things where they really, particularly with 8, and 8.1 does address it quite a bit, but that's one of the things they got really wrong. They needed an introductory video at the start of Windows 8 when it first installed, just to show you all the bits, because that's all it needs. Once you show people how it works, they usually get it.
I think I do think this hybrid implementation was really confusing, because people saw that might have seen a PC or a laptop in PC world and played around on the desktop a bit without necessarily realizing all the rest of the stuff was there, and then you kind of get it home and it is confusing. And I do wonder if Windows 8 on a tablet had been a big brother of Windows Phone, that without the desktop, that people would have just got used to it. At one point, the first purchase of an iPad, they weren't confused because it didn't have a desktop. They were, they had what they had in front of them. Whereas, Windows 8 kind of had this hybrid thing, and I think it did lead to confusion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is Windows 9 or whatever it is going to be called, and whatever's shown off next week is about winning back those people. I think primarily next week it's about enterprise users, but what they'll be showing is effectively the same thing, though, with the start menu and things that consumers of Windows 7 and Windows Vista and XP are very familiar with.
And I think I'd like to use the P word, perception. It really does all come down to perception. I was having a relatively heated debate with someone in the office the other week, and he was saying about how terrible Vista was and how terrible Windows 8 was. And I was explaining about how Windows 8.1 makes things a lot better with being able to boot directly to the desktop. And I'm the first to admit that Microsoft should never have got rid of the start menu for those desktop users. But also on the flip side, everyone's got this really negative perception of Windows Vista, but actually it wasn't as bad as it sounds. I remember starting a job and there was a big kind of hatred of Vista, but I ended up persuading 2 people to buy brand new laptops with it on, because I was using it and showed them it, and because they bought hardware that was designed for the operating system. Because yes, it was a terrible beast in terms of performance, but on the right hardware that was designed with it in mind, it had no problems at all. But it's just historically now has this perception, and I think that's why Microsoft is now racing ahead and starting to talk about Windows 9, because they've once that perception stands for Windows 8, it's always going to stand.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's about bringing them sort of around, isn't it? Though, people like to sort of dismiss or approve of things on a simple level, don't they? So they can say, okay, yeah, that Windows 8 was no good, I'll stick with Windows 7, and then, apparently this Windows 9 thing is like Windows 7, it's got the same sort of style, that'll be okay for me. And it's just like with Vista. I mean, we were involved, Gary and I, with with Vista and Media Center when it first came out, and it was working great, and it was only a bit of over time, the perception of it being a bad OS was kind of appeared really, and it kind of surprised a lot of people, I think. And then it took Windows 7 just to polish and just smooth off some of the edges from Windows Vista, and suddenly you've got a great OS.
Yeah, and the other thing Windows 7 really benefited from was having Vista out there, because without Vista, none of the drivers would have been sorted out for Windows 7. So Windows 7 would have been as bad as Vista when it first came out. Because I mean, basically that was the problem. It was the drivers most of the time, and that's actually part of the problem that Windows 8's got in some ways, that it needed a good software base behind it for the modern apps to be take off and be accepted. And of course, when it first came out, it didn't have that. It's now got to a point where there's an awful lot of really good apps out there on the Windows 8 store, which will really serve Windows 9 well if they're going to put those onto the desktop.
I'm glad you said that, Gary, because that was exactly my argument. Because he was saying about how amazing Windows 7 was. I said, but Windows 7 wouldn't have existed without Vista. Yes, Windows 7 helped on all the and he just wouldn't accept that Windows 7 was essentially Vista underneath with a bit of spit and polish, and he just thought this Windows 7 was the most amazing thing since sliced bread.
So it's actually really interesting, because I was talking to someone today who's actually still got Vista on a laptop, which brave person if you listen to all the accounts. But he said basically once the Windows 7 drivers came out, virtually all of them worked with Vista.
Yes.
Vista became a really solid operating system, and you didn't need to update it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just like Ian said, that I mean, Windows Vista was when I started getting into Media Center and started, chatting to you guys on Twitter and starting to come on shows like this. And so, Vista recorded all of our TV for a good, 2 years.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Same for most of us who probably a lot.
Just don't put the TV pack on.
Well, in some cases the TV pack was good, but at least we remember what the TV pack was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the first high def, wasn't it? Introduced the WTV format.
Yeah.
I
mean that was a bad thing, according to a lot of people, including me at the time. I think I couldn't understand why they didn't still TVRMS, but
yeah.
There we go.
We'll have to dig up some old shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually leads to a question that someone asked me on Twitter, is have we heard any rumours about whether Windows Media Center will be present in Windows 9? Assuming it's called Windows 9, but let's call it Windows 9 for now.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in many ways, I guess there could potentially be no reason that they couldn't do the same as they've done with Windows 8 and just bring it across, but no, I really can't imagine it being in there.
One interesting thing I did hear though was that effectively Windows 9 will be an update to Windows 8. So in the same way like a service pack is an update, rather than being a completely fresh install or a rebuild of the core base. So it might be that if you've got Media Center, it just stays there. Possibly. I mean, that's total speculation, but the feasibility to have it do that is there.
And what we can be probably fairly confident of is it won't be in the build next week.
No, unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, the key thing is it still supported, because that's, as I've said many times before, the most important thing, particularly for the States, is the guide data. And if the guide data starts to go away because they no longer support it, then that's really the end of things. And there are alternatives, particularly in Europe. There's a lot of alternatives, but not so much in some other places. I mean,
I kind of thought, well, maybe it'll get one more Windows release and it'll be included, because I don't think the core framework, like Jason said, is still the same. So why would you not do it? But then I suppose just the fact that they've got to create a separate SKU and have that upgrade in place upgrades and all that kind of administration around it might just be enough to them say we're not bothering.
Talking about things which are on my Media Center and are going away, I don't know if you guys saw, but Total Media Theatre's demise has been announced.
Yes, I saw that on Josh Pollard's site.
Yeah, Digital Media Center picked up on it. And kudos to them picking it up. I mean, I would have picked up on it this week because I actually went to re-download my copy to reinstall it and found I couldn't. So basically, they just pulled it almost overnight. Support forms just. And the guy, Jason, who's been running Microsoft support and is a really good guy, I think has been dropped on from above. And he's just had the rug pulled out from under him. But I'm hearing fairly strong rumours this may be the result of a Dolby lawsuit. That Dolby may have been suing them for royalties for the product.
Right.
For not accounting properly for the product, and that may have been the reason why it's been pulled. But it's a really shame because of that, obviously that and Sublink are the only two Blu-ray playbacks, and forget about Media Center generally for Windows. So if you're using your PC as your main Blu-ray machine, which is what I do, you've just lost one of the key people for that. And I have to say, for me, Total Media Theatre was by far the better of the two on my hardware. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that.
Yeah, definitely. And sorry, also just jump back what you were saying. I'm sure there'll be, that Media Center crowd a pretty clever bunch. I'm sure someone will have a post up how to get Windows 8 Media Center running on Windows 9.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, definitely.
Copy the DLLs over and register them. And
yeah, definitely. So there'll be something out there. But
yeah.
So
But just to recap on what Gary said there, the point is if you're using it for TV and they pull the guide data, then there's not a lot you can do with it.
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah, you can. You can buy DV Link and use DigiGuide.
Yeah. I mean, you can use DigiGuide you can use Big Screen EPG to pull DigiGuide into your Media Center as well. I used to do that when I was using the cable box stuff. So there are ways around that guide data in certain countries. Some countries there's no third-party supplier though, so it becomes virtually impossible to get. So
and we do pretty much know that we know there isn't a Media Center team, and there might be sustain engineering or whatever working on bug fixes, but there isn't a team that can work on. So it's not like when we went from XP to Vista and we got a brand new version, or Vista 7 we got a slightly updated version. There is no one there to do any development on it.
The lights are out.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think there's nothing core changing in the operating system from what I understand.
Yeah.
So from just the rumors I'm hearing, it's more UX UI changes rather than actual under the hood stuff.
Yeah, so it could be interesting, couldn't it? If it is just like an in-place upgrade, then yeah, it could carry it over.
I mean, interesting that the add features to Windows option, which really only Media Center. I know you could go from standard to Pro, but then Pro to the Windows Media Center pack. But there was never any other SKUs ever using that mechanism. So the mechanism is there, isn't it, for them to add paid features added to Windows. But apart from Media Center, there was nothing that took advantage of that. And I wonder, that's what it will be though. If that goes away, then the mechanism is gone. Then they won't include the Dolby key or the Dolby playback facility in every version, especially when they're going to give Windows away free. So that's where I think it potentially could disappear. It would be a shame. It would be the end of the road. But we won't, like I said, we won't know next week because we don't even know if they're going to give builds away next week. But it looks like they pretty much are going to have some release, but it's going to be what they class as a technical preview and, like I said before, enterprise. So we probably won't see it.
Yeah, I think also, sorry, with what Gary was saying about Total Media Theatre going away, it's obviously a good time for Xbox to reduce their price so you can get a cheap Blu-ray player.
Which they have, haven't they?
They have, yeah. It's down to $329 now. So if I'd waited a year to buy mine, I could have saved £100.
Yeah.
Yeah, damn.
We wouldn't
and it would have had day one edition on a controller.
I'm still not tempted. Although if my Blu-ray playback goes away completely, I might be. I'm just hoping Cyberlink are going to hang around and Dolby aren't going after them. But I think that I'm pretty sure they are fairly well, totally legitimate. Cyberlink. So.
I must admit, I use mine as a Blu-ray player, but mainly, as I said before, mainly as a Netflix player. But I do use it, and I will be getting Forza Horizon when that comes out.
Yeah, I must admit actually, and I guess this shows the difference between a Microsoft-owned studio. But I'd say the negative about the cost of digital games, but actually, positives as well. Forza Horizon 2 is actually really reasonably priced. I think it's like £44 for the bog standard game, which is that's kind of acceptable retail prices. So I must admit I've pre-ordered it, and it's great because it's a nearly 40-odd gig game, so it took about 3 days for it to download. So it was nice. If I'd have had to wait till the 1st of October, 3rd of October, it would have been like 6th or 7th by the time I actually got to play it.
Oh, 40 gig. Oh, that's going to take me at least a few minutes.
Oh, yes.
It's interesting, actually, to talk about that. There's a campaign at the moment for real-world broadband measurement. And they were talking about how long to download a movie, how long to download music, how long to download a game, and they were sort of saying which one. So I think it's going to be how many minutes per Call of Duty will be actually one of the criteria,
right?
for the new rating they're going to come up with. So I think obviously Jason's going to have a very high number, and we're going to have very low numbers.
Yeah.
Interesting. The demo was 10 gig, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it was.
Which I have played the demo. It was pretty good, actually. So the actual the timetable then for next week. I think the invites went out to some journalists that's on for Tuesday evening, but there's also some other events on Wednesday as well. So we guess we really don't know what exactly we'll be able to talk about on Tuesday evening next week. It's going to be quite confusing next week.
Yeah, and I think me and Ian may not be able to talk about a lot after next week. So it's going to be quite interesting because I understand they are actually going to brief MVPs this time on certain things. But I don't know what things they're doing on what they're going to brief them on, and then we won't be able to talk about anything. So.
I've got a feeling we'll be able next week when we record. We won't have had the briefing, so we can maybe talk freely next week. And then then how long I don't know whether they'll have any NDA period or not. I just can't remember seeing any details, so maybe there will be.
Yeah, we're not we're not allowed to talk about the details of what we're allowed to talk about.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it's on a need-to-know basis.
Yeah, and we don't need to know.
No.
I think with the rate that builds are leaking, I don't think it'll be secret for long.
Yeah.
No, that's the ironic thing. I mean, it's not really much of an issue this time, but I do remember back in the Vista beta days where there was stuff for Media Center coming out and MVPs were NDA'd, but people were leaking it. So it was very frustrating really sometimes because you couldn't talk about new features even though you knew about them. Other people were leaking these things that they got off leak build. It was the right thing.
Yeah.
And then you get people breaking their NDAs, of course, and causes.
Yeah. I remember Paul. I think it was one of the first Media Center meetups where Paul Andrew Edney was talking about the next version of Windows Home Server and all the stuff that he couldn't talk about, but he was saying it was definitely going to be brilliant, all these media features, and then obviously they just got cut one by one.
Yes, yeah, and I still have that build here somewhere.
Oh right.
But I can't even tell you. I don't know, Gary. Has it expired yet? Can we say it was?
You're still not allowed to talk about that one.
Okay, can't talk about that one.
I think it was a 10-year one or something crazy, but
you'll have to read about it in my memoirs.
Which will take me like 3 weeks to download.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Right. What else are we going to? Oh, did you talk about? I can't remember now. Did you talk about that new keyboard last week? Because I think I was doing the blog post as you were recording on Tuesday.
I don't think it had actually been announced before we started recording. So I think,
yeah. So I don't know if you've seen this, but Microsoft always have excellent hardware from mice and keyboard. Their sort of hardware division. And they've announced a keyboard that's they call it a universal mobile keyboard.
Is it cloud first, mobile first?
It's mobile first. You can use it in the cloud, maybe if you're in the clouds. But yeah, so this is I don't know if you saw that Hutu keyboard that I reviewed a few weeks ago, which is a little portable keyboard. I think Logitech do one as well, but this is from Microsoft hardware, and it's a proper sort of portable keyboard, but it works with iOS, Android, and Windows via Bluetooth.
Yeah, it's a dark, cold world we live in, isn't it? Who would have ever thought Microsoft with a cross-platform keyboard?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, it's good to see that kind of thing come out because there are lots of different Bluetooth keyboards out there, but they are normally, you have to buy one for your iPad or one for your Android. Whereas, it definitely, if you've got a keyboard like that, that's, and I'm assuming Microsoft hardware is always really good quality. So if you've got a good quality keyboard like that, you can just keep it as you change devices. Then yes, it looked really nice.
It's got a little slot, hasn't it, to rest your device in. Interesting, the one device it doesn't work with is Windows Phone.
Yes, yeah.
But that's because Windows Phone I don't think supports hardware keyboards yet.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm sure it's coming down the pipe.
That's one of the things they said in Denim, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know I think Ian mentioned it briefly at the start. They're talking about more updates for Windows phones on the developer program to enable the Cyan update. I think they're going to open the floodgates a little bit wider. I don't know also if you saw Microsoft have released a second Miracast dongle.
Yes, I just saw that tonight actually before I came up.
It's not. It's like you wait for one bus and then two come along. What's the point of having two different products? I don't get it.
No,
two different markets. It is actually two different markets.
It's
interesting. Well, if you again listen to Entertainment 2.0, and I think Josh had a really good argument on this about how the Nokia or the Microsoft One sharing dongle for whatever it's called for the Lumias, it wasn't for him. It wasn't what he wanted. Because he wanted something he didn't care about NFC. He didn't want something he had a dongle he had to put on the desk. Whereas for a phone, the NFC makes perfect sense. You come over, you tap it, you're paired. There you go. So this is a much more conventional Miracast thing. It basically looks like a USB stick, although it's an HDMI stick with a USB plug-in as well. So you plug into your HDMI port inside your TV, plug a USB stick. It's very simple. It's less cost. It's about half it's going to probably end up list about half the cost of the other one because it's got less technology in it. So it is two different markets really.
But still, I mean, the announcement I saw again, and I don't know whether it's just to get the page views or quite misunderstanding, but the headline is, Microsoft here, they're going to be, in fact, the report actually said, look out Chromecast, Microsoft is bringing a wireless dongle in, but it's not, is it?
It's just a Miracast dongle. It's just a Miracast dongle.
And as Jason points out, previously when we talked about it, you can't do what you can do on Chromecast, where you can't say, from a Chromecast, from a phone, I can say, play this movie from YouTube or whatever, and it goes off and plays it, and I can turn the phone off, I can do something else, it hands it over. But Miracast is not that.
No. So I think a Miracast is so incompatible as well. I've been playing with a Maplins have recently had a dongle in. I'm just trying to remember the name of it, which has gone out on top of my head. But basically, it's a Miracast dongle, but it has its own EasyCast. That's it. So there's an EasyCast app which allows you to send stuff from the Lumia 1020 and 920, which obviously haven't got Miracast. So it works in both modes, and that's going to undercut this Microsoft One by quite a way, and it looks very similar. But it's interesting that they've almost had to come up with their own software to make it work on cross-platforms, and it doesn't work with the Surface in Miracast mode because it hasn't got a driver for the Surface RT.
Right. Yeah.
So Miracast relies on you having a driver on the sending device, which actually matches your hardware you're receiving on. Yet it's supposed to be a standard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really weird world out there for Miracast. But at least this Microsoft one is going to work with Microsoft technology. It's going to work with the Surface. It's going to be supported on RT. So there is something to be said for that. And I think it does fill that gap that it may still be a little bit too pricey for what Josh wanted, but it fills that gap he was actually after and was hoping the other dongle was going to be.
It's for me the disappointing part of it is it's just not that thing where you can use it as a device in its own right. It's only the screen sharing.
Yeah, I mean, the wide-eye stuff does actually allow for potentially future enhancements to that. And they are software-based devices, so you can do anything in software eventually with firmware updates. And there was a talk at one stage of Miracast 2, which would be a handoff. So you basically could stream images to it, effectively using DLNA, which is quite interesting. But using DLNA to the enhanced version of DLNA, which allows outside sources to be used. So I mean, but you see, the problem with that is that none of the standards of that have actually been resolved yet. So it's difficult to actually do anything until the standards are resolved.
Did you see that the new USB connector is also going to support DisplayPort?
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I do worry that that'll mean we'll have even less ports on our devices.
Yes.
I think we'll end up with one port on most devices.
Yeah, but there's little dongles hanging everywhere. Yeah, I think I like the idea of the sort of Miracast device, but what we'd really like to see is a in the spirit of Microsoft's sort of platform agnostic, is a device that has its own OS, that has the Xbox Music, Xbox Video, and then you control it through Smart Glass. See that sort of an Xbox Mini.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen, is it? But
no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but it may, I suppose the other idea, because Microsoft have put in Xbox Music and things like that on other platform devices, so they just need a way of getting them to work together. And maybe that's the answer, is not to have to build their own hardware ecosystem, is to piggyback their content onto other ecosystems. Right, what else did we have I wanted to touch on before we go this week? There was some updates, wasn't there, to Xbox Music? I think it was towards the end of last week, so some syncing bug fixes and things like that.
Yeah, nothing too exciting there.
But they're continuing, though, with their sort of every other week updates, aren't they? Or sometimes it's almost weekly. Cloud Music, I think you talked about this last week, but since we talked about it, there's another update for that. So that's the app that sort of brings Google Music to Windows Phone. I know you were saying last week about it, that I've been using it, but I have actually switched over to Xbox Music now anyway. So that'll be when I'm waiting for my Pink Floyd album to release. I can get that on Xbox
Music. Indeed.
Yeah. Although that's probably when I'll buy a physical copy of it as well.
Yeah. You haven't got U2 then?
Yeah. I haven't tried the removal tool yet. It's crazy, isn't it? That was just so funny. That.
Yeah. Spamming me with music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's laughable in some ways, but when we talked about 16 gig devices, if you get that album bombarded, automatically downloading your 16 gig device, you're never going to install iOS 8.
Yeah, that's right. That's the first thing I tried to remove, and I realised it wasn't actually on the device. It's in the cloud, their cloud storage. But then annoyingly it shows up, and you've got to use that tool to remove it. But that was a strange move, that one. I wonder what Microsoft will force down.
People's throats next.
Maybe a bit
Windows 9.
Yeah. Maybe actually, Windows 9 will come with Simple Minds Greatest Hits or something. So.
Start me up.
It's interesting the whole thing though, actually on forced updates, because obviously Google are starting to do that with some of the Android stuff. They're forcing you up from certainly on some of the point upgrades on Android, that if you want to use the store, you have to update.
Yeah.
I could, and Apple are starting to move that way to get rid of some of the really old versions of the Mac OS. I could see Microsoft doing that because the hardware constraints aren't there at the moment with Windows 8. I've not heard of any change in hardware requirements for Windows 9. So Windows 8 to Windows 9 shouldn't need new hardware. So you could force people to update that.
Right. Yeah.
And I could actually see it become a forced update.
Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, so just like as a security update, this is what you're going to get, like they did with the 8.1.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and it pays well. It pays well if you do that, or make some features not available unless you go up to the new OS like Apple always do. So nobody ever complains about having to upgrade to the next version of iOS.
Although I've heard a lot of people complaining about it this time, funny enough.
Yeah, because of how difficult it was. But actually, the idea of doing it isn't something they complained about. It was the actual mechanism of how it works.
Yeah,
maybe. So yeah, I mean, I think it's quite an interesting call. We'll probably hear more. Well, we might be able to talk about it, might not we?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what we'll be able to talk about next week?
Yeah.
Jason will be free to talk without any
Yeah, so but Jason will be talking to himself next week.
Yes.
Which is quiet. Yes, well, I can neither confirm nor deny that this is the CIA's new Twitter feed.
We need a secret code, a bit like on the Formula One. You can't you can't give the technical radio messages anymore. Maybe we need special encoded messages.
Oh, you can flash lights though, can't you? Pitwall.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We'll have green and red lights to flash from Pitwall.
Yeah, only works when you're watching the video stream and there's no camera. So
yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm looking forward to that next week. It'd be great if we get some hands-on with the OS next week, or certainly probably by the show after. The information will be out there.
Yeah. Can I just raise one thing? Talking about Pebble again, as I was earlier. I mentioned last week the Greg Panter the Pebble smartwatch app, Pebble Plus smartwatch Plus app and Pro app. I'll get it right in a minute. And how good they were. I've actually started a user voice for that. If anybody's got a Pebble and wants Windows Phone to work with it, just to allow Greg some more access, because at the moment he's working on the outside. He hasn't got the access to the wearable APIs, which are very much operator and manufacturer only. And as it doesn't seem like there's any imminent Pebble for Windows Phone from Pebble themselves, I've just started a user voice ask Microsoft to support him with the APIs. Whether anything will actually come of it or not, I don't know, but it at least raises the profile within Microsoft, so hopefully it might do. He's done a fabulous job up to now, and a lot of people really do rely on that software, and it'd be really nice if he could actually just take it that one step further. Well,
if you send me the link, I'll make sure I include that. Yeah,
I will do that now.
Excellent. So just fascinating tech.
Yeah, we're very close to the EFA special issue, so that's coming out. We've got the spare one is our feature thing, which is a mobile phone you can basically put an AA battery in and leave it in your pocket for almost a year, and doesn't wear out. So that's going to be quite interesting. You can read about that, and lots of other stuff from EFA, best of EFA stuff. So a lot of stuff I talked about last week in a bit more depth.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And Jace, where can we find you?
You can find me sometimes on Twitter at DatabaseJace.
So, yeah, you can find me sometimes on Twitter as well.
Yeah. Sometimes you can, and you'll find me sometimes on there as well. Now my mouth is working again, thanks to my...
And just before I forget again, don't forget the competition.
Yes.
We've still got copies of ABBYY FineReader giveaway, and all you have to tell us is when ABBYY, or when the parent company started. Just send Ian at thedigitalifestyle.com with an email.
Yeah.
The first one's out the hat, we'll get the prize.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll include a link for that in the show notes, ian@thedigitallife.com, and the email. And that's it. So we'll be back next Tuesday evening. Maybe you're talking Windows 9, maybe not. Who knows what we'll have.
Ian and Gary on mute.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, so whatever's happened in that world, we'll have other news, because it's been such a busy news year this year. I just don't... I mean, we were talking about, I think, was it last Christmas, the previous Christmas, there wasn't any new in tech?
Yeah.
How wrong we were.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully in a month or two I'll be wearing denim.
Yes, indeed.
Rocking the status quo look.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what they'll do. Lumia will do. Microsoft will do. Force you status quo with your denim update.
There you go. You found it. Excellent. Right, so we'll be back next week. So thanks, Gary. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for joining us in the chat room. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Take care.
Okay, great stuff.